This is a community-supported legal education channel. Find out how you can support our mission at the links in the description below. It's always fun to explore the finer points of law, especially when they apply to current events. And in light of current events, I thought we should go over a 1997 case, an appeals court case for the Second Circuit, but not a precedential case. So you'll get to see what the whole published versus not published means. The court actually explains it here right in the beginning. So this is the case that established that it is possible to be too smart or too intelligent to be a police officer, and there's practically no legal remedy or no anti-discrimination provision or anything. So it's a short case. We'll dive into it, and then we'll talk about it a little bit on the back end. Come with me. So this is Robert Jordan versus the City of New London, Connecticut. Now, the City of New London was the subject of the Kelo versus City of New London case, which was a takings case, an eminent domain case, where ultimately the Supreme Court decided that the private purpose of selling the land to Merck Pharmaceuticals as part of a package deal of a waterfront business, campus and all that, which would have others than just Merck Pharmaceuticals. There'd be other businesses and everything. That the public benefit of that is really what mattered in takings. And they could take the whole section of the City of New London and then sell it to Merck Pharmaceuticals. And they could take that by eminent domain, by a taking under the Fifth Amendment. And so this is the City of New London getting hit twice. They seem to be making these controversial decisions. So this is Robert Jordan versus the City of New London, and this is in the United States Court of Appeals for the Second Circuit. So this is an appeals court case, which would normally make this precedential, but it says this is a summary order, which is not published. And whenever I publish one of these cases on my channel, somebody inevitably says, it says you can't publish it. No, all that means is it is not going to be published in the Federal Reporter and may not be cited as precedential authority, either to this court or any other court. However, it may be called to the attention of this or any other court in a subsequent stage of this case, a related case, or in any case for purposes of collateral estoppel or res judicata. Okay, so the res judicata is like double jeopardy. Collateral estoppel, I forget the exact definition of collateral estoppel, but estoppel is when you're relying on the case. And you'll see that the judge's reasoning in here is so clear. You'll understand immediately when you see what's going on why the judge decided this. But it's a weird operation of law that the way the law is written would allow discrimination against people applying to be police officers for being too smart. Let's take a look here. On March 16th, 1996, plaintiff Robert Jordan and 500 other applicants underwent a written screening process conducted by the Law Enforcement Council of Southeastern Connecticut, a coalition of 14 cities and towns, for a position as a police officer. That testing process operated as an initial screening for participating police departments. The testing material included the Wonderlic personnel test and the scholastic level exam, which purports to measure cognitive ability. An accompanying manual listed recommended scores for varying professions and cautioned that because overqualified candidates may soon become bored with unchallenging work and quit, simply hiring the highest scoring employee can be self-defeating. Jordan scored a 33 on the Wonderlic personnel test, above the median for any listed occupation, and well over the normative median of 21 suggested for a police patrol officer. In the fall of 1996, Jordan learned that the City of New London was interviewing candidates. Upon inquiry, however, he learned from the assistant city manager, Keith Harrigan, that he would not be interviewed because he didn't fit the profile. Plaintiff, who is 46 years old at the time, suspected age discrimination and filed an administrative complaint with the Connecticut Commission on Human Rights and Opportunities. The city responded that it removed Jordan from consideration because he scored a 33 on the Wonderlic personnel test, and that to prevent frequent job turnover caused by hiring overqualified applicants, the city only interviewed candidates who scored between 20 and 27. The plaintiff brought a civil rights action in the district court for the District of Connecticut alleging that the city and Harrigan denied him equal protection in violation of the 14th Amendment and Article 4, Section 20 of the Connecticut Constitution. On August 29, 1999, the district court granted defendants' motion for summary judgment, finding no suspect classification and that defendants had shown a rational basis for the policy. We agree that New London's use of an upper cut did not violate the Equal Protection Clause, and the judge then affirms the judgment of the district court. Summary judgment is appropriate where there is no genuine issue as to any material fact and the moving party is entitled to judgment as a matter of law. And we review the grant of summary judgment brand new on appeal, de novo. As plaintiff concedes, there exists no fundamental right to employment as a police officer. So literally no fundamental right like the freedom of speech or the freedom to have clean water or the right to have clean water. It is well settled that where a statutory classification does not itself impinge on a right or liberty protected by the Constitution, the validity of the classification must be sustained, unless the classification rests on grounds wholly irrelevant to the achievement of any legitimate government purpose objective. Under rational basis analysis, which is the way we test laws for constitutionality when they do not impinge on a fundamental right. So there is no fundamental right to be employed as a police officer, so therefore we don't use strict scrutiny, we use rational basis scrutiny, which means a statutory classification that neither proceeds along suspect lines nor infringes fundamental constitutional rights must be upheld against equal protection challenges if there is any reasonably conceivable state of facts that could provide a rational basis for the classification. So this is the line between rational and irrational. That's it. Is there a rational reason or is there no rational reason? If there is no rational reason, Mr. Jordan wins. If there is any rational reason, not irrational, any rational reason, sorry, it's just awkward to say, then Mr. Jordan loses and the police have the right to discriminate based on intelligence. We require no supporting empirical evidence and will not strike down a classification as unconstitutional unless the facts on which the classification is apparently based could not reasonably be conceived to be true by the governmental decision maker. In the Dandridge case, a case involving welfare benefits, the Supreme Court stated that to approve the invalidation of state economic or social regulation as overreaching would be far too reminiscent of an era when the court thought the 14th Amendment gave it power to strike down state laws because they may be unwise, improvident, or out of harmony with a particular school of thought. The court held that classifications need not be perfect because the problems of governments are practical ones and may justify, if they do not require, rough accommodations, illogical it may be, and unscientific. The court concluded that the 14th Amendment gives the federal courts no power to impose upon the states their views of what constitutes wise economic or social policy. So the court is saying, doesn't have to be a wise decision, doesn't have to be a proper decision or good social policy. It just has to be not irrational. Applying that lenient standard of review, we conclude that even absent a strong proven statistical correlation between high scores on the Wunderlich test and turnover resulting from lack of job satisfaction, it is enough that the city believed on the basis of material prepared by the test maker and a letter along similar lines sent by the Law Enforcement Council that there was such a connection. Plaintiff presented some evidence that high scorers do not actually experience more job dissatisfaction, but that evidence does not create a factual issue because it matters not whether the city's decision was correct so long as it was rational. The city could rationally have relied upon the guide to interpreting test results provided by the test maker as justification for reducing the size of the applicant pool with both a low and a high cutoff. Even if unwise, the upper cut was a rational policy instituted to reduce job turnover and thereby lessen the economic cost involved in hiring and training police officers who do not remain long enough to justify the expense. We have considered appellant's remaining arguments and find them without merit. For the court, Roseanne B. McKechnie, clerk. Okay. I guess that's the clerk, and I guess the judge. I printed this off the internet, so I'm assuming that it was signed by the judge. But yeah, so what's happening there? Well, there are only so many protected classes in the U.S. What is a protected class? Well, a protected group or a protected class is a group of people qualified for special protection. What are we talking about? Race, religion, national origin, age, 40 and over, gender, pregnancy, familial status, disability status, veteran status, and genetic information. Those are your federal protected classes, and the states can add to those. A state can have additional protected classes in its constitution. For instance, maybe transgender would be protected in some state constitutions. And that's it. That's it. That's all that's protected against discrimination. The next remaining check or balance is that rational basis test. And if the governmental decision maker has any articulable, it has to be prior to the court case, so they can't make up a new one after a lawsuit or something. They have to present evidence of what the decision making was before a lawsuit. But when they make the law, when they make the decision, if they have any rational, reasonable basis for it, in other words, if it's not irrational, then they can do it. This is the same exact situation with cannabis. It's on the Schedule 1 list of controlled substances, and normally you'd think you could just go make the case to a judge. Well, it's just like alcohol, or it's not so dangerous. It's not nearly as bad as those other Schedule 1. It does not belong on Schedule 1, whatever. A lot of people make those arguments. Well, those are great arguments, but they're not effective arguments because the government doesn't need to encounter those arguments ever. If the government wants to regulate marijuana, it can do so on any rational basis because smoking is not a constitutionally guaranteed fundamental right. It is not a constitutionally guaranteed fundamental right, so it is protected by rational basis constitutional scrutiny only. And only if we can show that there is zero rational basis, which there is not. There is not zero rational basis. The government could, by the way, do the same thing to alcohol. They could prohibit alcohol from being sold to people for a period of years until things spiral out of control and the government realizes it was a bad decision. And that would be perfectly regulable on rational basis because you don't have a fundamental right to drink alcohol. And so you also don't have a fundamental right to be not discriminated against based on intelligence. Someone can choose to have you tested, I guess, and as a condition for employment, and they can say if you score over a certain score, you don't get in. Now, I think that's a terrible policy. Like, I think it's a really stupid policy. Like, yes, I get the pun. Like, being too intelligent, it's a stupid policy. It's a stupid policy. Yes. But it's not something that is forbidden by U.S. law. I think it should be. I think that's really, I think it really is pretty dumb to limit the intelligence of people who are going to be executing and enforcing the laws of the United States. I have to go to school for at least 7 years, and I ended up going to school for about 11 or 12 because I got a master's degree in there too. And law enforcement doesn't need to go to school for very long at all. Hopefully some police departments do require actual study in school and have some law courses or something, but also the minimum ones don't. The minimum standard is a high school diploma and a few months of training, and that's it. So what do you think of that? Let me know what you think in the comments below. That is, again, not precedential, and it's not like you can go around citing Robert Jordan versus City of New London in cases around the country. However, the basis for the judge's decision is well-established law. So well-established that there doesn't need to be precedent. This is going to be applicable in all 50 states, except for any of those states that have implemented a specific protection for non-discrimination based on intelligence.
Yeah, and I understand why you probably couldn't put intelligence in general as something not to discriminate against, because there are a lot of ways in which we discriminate against people with lower intelligence. So if you were to make it a protected class, it would swing both ways.
Yeah.
And so I understand the rationale there. I just feel kind of frustrated that a police force would rely on such junky data in order to make important policy decisions
Yeah.
when I could give you a dozen reasons why people who are more intelligent would be just as satisfied or even more satisfied with the job. Especially like people with higher intelligence tend to have more sensation seeking, and they like jobs that are different every day and that challenge them. And being a police officer, that is highly variable and very
Yeah.
challenging.
Similarly, I was told that I would find being a lawyer very boring and I should not pursue a law career because all it is filling out forms and pushing paperwork. So when people make those decisions, I think it's ultimately very stupid of them to discriminate against anyone because they're too intelligent or because you think that a job fits a certain stereotype or something. Um, it would be much. I would be much more on the side of the police force for discriminating against supposedly intelligent people if they did it in a more tailored way. If they maybe made it clear up front, we're trying to limit turnover, so we want people who are dedicated to the job. So we want you to show us how you're dedicated to the job, and they should find some other metric, some other measurable statistic or something to correlate with job turnover. It sounds like some chief just said, "Oh yeah, that guy we hired, he was too smart, so we're just not going to do that again." It sounds like the chief just like made a decision as opposed to had like heaps of correlation and things analyzed by a statistician. And they, "Oh yeah, look at your problem here. You're hiring people who are too smart." Like the court would have said that if the city had presented heaps of evidence from experts about this correlation. I don't think it's actually true. I think people, some intelligent people, would very much enjoy being a police officer. And how do you get to be a detective, for example, if you don't start off as a police officer? So wouldn't you want intelligent detectives? Do people? I've never tried, so I don't know. Can someone tell me? Can you just go walk into a police department and say, "I want to apply to be a detective," without any policing experience? I doubt it. So you need to hire intelligent cops to get intelligent detectives, right? Just saying. So that's our show. Thank you for joining me. I'm Leonard French, your favorite copyright attorney, and this is Lawful Masses, your favorite community-supported legal news and educational channel here on YouTube and also on Floatplane. Thank you for your monthly support on our various support platforms. Patreon.com/LJFrench, Sponsors.com/law, YouTube memberships, Twitch subscriptions, and Floatplane memberships as well. Thank you in June to the $50 plus supporters: Joe Tyson, Wes Delj, Citizen of the Sovereign, John Steele, Gavin Barnard, Eevi, Kyle Mudrak, Spirit Bear, Jan Negrey, Michael Pearce, Daniel Perez, Blackleaf, Benjamin Hitov, Stephen, Ottah, Cute Grills in Your Area, Longreach Jones, Definitely Not Prenda Law, Ugly Grill, Shielo T, Josh Baker, Gregory, Rudolph Bescherer Jr., Kristian, Hellman, Jay Dixon, Ameknight, Oscar the Phrophet, and Hot Grills in Your Area, a new supporter who just popped up yesterday but already paid for June. And thank you to the June $5 plus supporters who are scrolling on the LED panel next to me and will be on the crawl of the videos and the descriptions below. I love you all. I'll see you in the videos that drop.